Okay, so it's my honor to introduce our morning keynote, Chris Volpe. Chris is the CEO and president of Multivarious. It's a game studio located in Columbus. He also leads the Sandbox, which is part of the Idea Foundry in Columbus. It's the world's largest creative space for basically game developers and people doing creative things with immersive media. Most notably, maybe, he runs the GDEX Expo in Columbus. It's every fall. This upcoming GDEX is October 12th and 13th with a developer day on October 11th. You can actually register for that now, and Chris was kind enough to create a discount code for this summit. So if you type in the code OU Games, you will get 20% off. So that's October 11th through 13th at the Greater Columbus Convention Center. I've known Chris for a long time, and frankly, there's no better advocate in the state of Ohio for gaming and basically immersive media creativity. So please join me in welcoming Chris Volpe.
All right, I'm still Chris Volpe. I'm still all of these things. I've put some links on here just in case anybody's interested in hearing me talk more. I don't know why you would be, but most of this stuff can just be found on YouTube or on the interwebs. But just a variety of things that sort of showcase what we've been working on and what we're trying to do. Our ultimate goal at Multivarious is to make a gaming ecosystem here in Columbus and Ohio. So the tagline I've been using is pretend that we're a movie studio trying to build a Hollywood. We're trying to make this the center of gaming, esports, and creative technology in the region. And I think we're doing some really exciting things. I'm going to go over some of that today. Also, this is my dog, Baby. I insert her in every presentation in some way. So she's sick, but she wants to talk about video games. So I assume that you're all interested in video games because you're here. How many, just so I can know, how many are students at OU currently? Okay. Who are students at other places? Sweet. All right, so we got a lot of students here. Who here just likes video games? All right, cool. So as was mentioned, we've already heard, the gaming industry is very big. So 2018, 137.9 billion. I've been trying to cross-reference this because this is a big jump over last year, 13.3. So I just wanted to make sure that this was correct, but I haven't seen anything that conflicts this. That is a big, big number. And you can see some breakdowns of PC, console, and mobile games, just so you can get a grasp of where this money is coming from. But as you can see, we have a lot of different breakdowns of where games are, but mobile is a increasingly bigger and bigger share, right? And it's hard to believe that this phone only came out in 2007. So I remember it came out my birthday, June 29th, 2007. And if you remember too, there was no app store when the iPhone first came out. So the iPhone came out, there was no phone like it. It didn't have an app store for like the first year and a half. But ever since then, it has been disrupting not only just our concept of digital marketplaces, but games as well. Just a little grasp of where this money is coming from. What's up, Tom? How's it going? Tom's from Chicago, so we got... But just to give you a rough grasp of where this money is coming from, a couple interesting things here. You can see that China and Asia Pacific are a dominant market for gaming. But interestingly enough, some of you may know this, China didn't even allow game consoles until a few years ago, until about 3 or 4 years ago. So there were no PlayStations, there were no Xboxes, there was no Nintendo in China until the government lifted the ban and allowed those to be sold. So it's a very new market for a lot of the big players in the space. And then this slide should look familiar. But the key here is just looking at the trend lines that are going up with games. So yes, games is big, 2018, 137 billion. Its trajectory is getting close to 200. That's only, what, 3 years from now? That is a huge growth rate if this sustains. Most industries would kill for this kind of growth rate. Like this is very, very impressive. And as you start to look at the combination between other sectors, cumulatively, we're going to be in a very, very big place. One of the other interesting things about this graph is that you can sort of see, unfortunately, we're not in it, but 2008 to 2012, we had the Great Recession, right? Video games are a relatively recession-resistant industry. They're not recession-proof, but when we saw a lot of other industries taking nosedives in that 2008 to 2012 range, video games were still steadily growing, and that's because of the perceived value in a lot of games. You know, you can go out, you can have a dinner with your significant other, spend 40 or 50 bucks on that. Then you go to the movies, you're spending 20 or 30 dollars. By the time it all adds up, you're somewhere at 70 to 100 bucks for an evening. You can buy a video game for $60 and get countless hours out of entertainment out of it. So there's a huge perceived value in games that other industries just aren't a part of. So here is a look at a comparative between video games, music, and movies. Most people don't, when I ask this, most people generally go to movies as number one. Like we see all the big ads. We just think movies is this giant empire that cannot be toppled. But if you actually look at the global revenue spend, you can see that music and movies combined still don't hit video games. So this is a gigantic industry, and this encapsulates all of box office, streaming. It also counts hardware sales for video games and consoles. So this is a great time to be in this industry. There's a lot of money flowing into this industry, and there's a lot of opportunity to be involved in it from a game developer standpoint, but also some of the things Paul mentioned where there's management, sports management, marketing and advertising, graphic design, community management, and of course we have the proliferation of things like streaming. So eSports is another area that's pretty big, and if I'm wandering the stage too much, just pull me back in. But eSports is becoming a pretty large opportunity for people that want to be involved in video games, but not necessarily on the development side. So 906 million was last year's spend on eSports. 906 million compared to 140 billion is not a huge number. But this number is gigantic compared to years past, and you can see a 38.2 year-over-year increase on the industry. So this is something that's also expected to escalate, and a big part of that is streaming, right? Who here watches streamers? Does anybody here stream themselves? Got a few folks? Okay. So digital streaming, YouTube and Twitch are the two that are pulled up here, but obviously there's others like Mixer and whatnot. But these numbers on viewership are starting to get really, really insane. So we're starting to see tournaments like the League of Legends tournament, the Call of Duty World Series. I believe last year in 2018, the League of Legends World Championship event had more viewers than every other sporting event except for the NFL and the NBA championships. So just let that sink in for a little bit. If you look at it from a global perspective, it blows every other sporting event out of the water outside of maybe some soccer events like the World Cup. So this, just from a viewership perspective, this is becoming a very large place for not only just sort of content generation, but also from advertising and marketing and whatnot. So here's the most games are watched by hours on Twitch. You got a lot of the heavy hitters. You got CSGO, Dota, League of Legends, Overwatch, and Hearthstone. Hearthstone's kind of interesting because most people don't think about it, but it's one of the most watched games on streaming platforms. So I don't know if anyone in here plays Hearthstone, but there is quite a few people that are doing pretty well on streaming their Hearthstone content. Also, we've seen a lot of successes just with people, right? We had Ninja, who was the sports person of the year last year, who's making about $500,000 per month just on streaming revenue. That's not advertising, that's not sponsorship, that's not him going to events, that's just on the advertising dollars from the streaming itself. So there's a lot of ways to be successful in the streaming field. And then we also have some of these large esports plans that are coming. So some of you may have noticed that OSU, and we have some OSU reps here today, is launching a esports program, including a training facility and an arena. This is one of the biggest esports initiatives on the collegiate level in the country, and it's happening, an hour and a half from here. And so we're starting to see a lot of this happening in Ohio. Schools are beginning to offer esports scholarships in addition to game development scholarships. And we're beginning to see top tier athletes who are performing at the highest level of competition are coming out of Ohio. So just like our very own LeBron James, we're beginning to see a lot of folks who are really performing on the national or global stage in this space. And programs like OSU's is going to help accelerate that. And so a couple other things I'm going to talk about that we're doing, I think will accelerate that as well. But let's also talk about gamers for a second. So a large part of what I do when I go out and talk, it wasn't mentioned, but I'm also an adjunct professor at Columbus State. I teach the Intro to Game Design course. And a big part of my sort of efforts when I work with students is to get them to understand some of the perceptions around gamers, and when they go out in the world to try to break those perceptions. Because despite all of the money that's in gaming, despite how ubiquitous it is around the world, I do remember Pac-Man. I do remember Pong. My first console was a ColecoVision. When I was growing up, gaming was a thing that it was more just nerds, right? Nerds played games. It started to become big in the mid 90s, but it still was nothing like we see now. And over time, over the past 20, 30 years, that's changed a lot, but these perceptions seem to sort of stick around. So one of the perceptions that I would like to ask is, who here knows what the average age of a gamer is in the United States? 35? 40? What was that?
I think when I last read it was 53.
53? Okay. So we got a 30, a 35, 53. Let's do one more. Anyone else? 32? All right. So I may have front-loaded the question by even talking about this, right? But it's 37. I happen to be 37, so very coincidental. But that idea of the 16-year-old white kid eating Doritos, drinking Mountain Dew in the basement, sure, that exists. But that's not gaming as a whole. That would be the same thing as asking somebody, what is the average age of a movie watcher? Your answer is probably not going to be 13, 14, 15, right? It's just become a part of the ethos. So there's some things that we're trying to break here. Along those lines, you've got average age of video game purchaser is in their early 40s, so around 42. Anyone want to take a guess why that is? They have money. What's that? Parents, yeah, they have kids. So the kids that are in that 5 to 16-year-old block, a lot of the final purchasing transactional decisions are being done by the parents, which is now bringing in, older individuals to the space. They are making buying decisions. They're starting to learn more about games, looking at things like ratings and the ESRB. Some of them, I'm sure, just their kids just buy me this, and they buy it and they don't understand what's going on. But at least more and more people are beginning to understand this market and get into it a little bit more. And of course, we have gender. So if you look at gaming as a whole, so PC, console, mobile, everything, the gender breakdown's actually not as big as you think it would be. So it's about 52% male, 48% female. Now there are sectors in which this is different, obviously, but if you just look at gaming as an aggregate, and we use gaming as, if you're just playing little things on your phone, you're a gamer, right? I'm not too interested in defining the term gamer in a super focused way. But if you like games and you play games occasionally, then you'd be considered a gamer. So we're starting to see this parity. And then you can see here, women age 18 or older represent a significantly greater portion of the game playing population than boys 18 or under. So let that sink in for a minute. All right, so what are we doing in Ohio? You've already heard some stuff happening. I'm killing it. Some stuff happening at OU. I mentioned a program happening at OSU, but there's actually a lot going on in Ohio. So I pulled up some stats. I was fortunate enough to be asked to come to Columbus Foundation's #1's lunch the other day, and they were pulling out these statistics that they had garnered. So this is going to be, you're going to see a lot of Columbus centric stuff. But there's a lot of stats in here that, as I was sitting there, I was like, wow, this is really relevant, and I think part of a broader understanding from a business aspect of what games are. So up here, we just have the percentage population change. I'm sure a lot of you have heard Columbus is going through this population boom right now, which is causing some consternation, but it's also bringing in a lot of new folks who normally would not have given Columbus a second thought. I'm sure you've heard this before. As GDEX, my job is to bring in speakers. I deal with a lot of speakers. More often than not, for people who don't have any connection to Ohio, I have to spend a little time massaging them and understanding what Columbus is. So I know we have a guest from Amazon here, but I was talking to one of the VPs a few years ago from Amazon, a friend of mine. I was trying to pull him in, and he was like, man, are you gonna make me come to Columbus in the middle of October? And I'm like, Columbus in October is amazing. Like, it's got great weather, there's a lot going on, but there's still just this mentality that Columbus in Ohio is not a place where exciting things are happening, right? But we're starting to see that at least from a grassroots, individual level, that's not true. Also, rates of business ownership. So we're starting to see a lot of small businesses pop up, and it should go without mentioning that in the game space, unless you're in California, the coasts, New York, Boston, you're probably going to be a part of a smaller indie studio, which means you're opening up your own thing, which is where I think the Entrepreneurship Center ties in really well, because starting your own company is a whole different beast than joining one, and you're going to have to learn a lot about not only the products you're making, but how do you properly manage your business. And we're starting to see some really big growth just from the startup world. Also, Columbus is way up there on board members and Fortune 1000 companies, and almost more importantly, is up there very highly in number of women-owned businesses. Now this stat is from 2012, so it's a little outdated, but both you can see Columbus is on there, Cleveland is on there, Cincy and Pittsburgh are all on this list for women-owned businesses. So we're starting to see a diversity of folks just taking the plunge and doing this entrepreneurship thing and being a part of it. And then we also have households with limited internet subscriptions. So this is something that is super important with the proliferation of digital downloads, right? We need more and more better internet. And Columbus, I know Athens has a great fiber system, Cincy, Cleveland. We're, as a state, we're in one of the top internet providers in terms of the quality of internet in metro areas. We're not doing so hot in terms of quality of internet in rural areas, which is something that we're working on. But at least our metro centers have really strong fiber-backed internet. I know we were trying to get Google Fiber in here for a while, and that didn't work. And again, I think that was largely a perceptual thing, because the first place they went to was Kansas City, I believe. And I think we're a lot better in Kansas City. But anyone watching on YouTube, I do like Kansas City. Average commute time. I just threw this in here because I hate traffic and I hate parking. And I'm probably going to be going to LA in June, and just the idea of driving around in LA is already giving me anxiety. But one of the nice things about Columbus and a lot of the other cities in Ohio is just our traffic and our commutes are not that bad. So I just threw that in there for fun. And then lastly, number of days with good air quality. So we've got really good air as well. Which is something that, from a holistic standpoint, you may have noticed that I have a couple degrees by my name. Both are in healthcare, one of which is public health. So holistic health and wellness is something that's important to me too, as well as games development and creative technology. And then this is sort of one of the more highlights slides, percentage of new residents aged 25 plus with a graduate degree. So we're seeing, again, we've got Cincy on there, we've got Columbus on there. We're seeing talented, educated folks moving into the region that have this desire to do creative endeavors. And so that's a benefit that we have that other cities don't. So before I talk about GDEX, I bounce around to a lot of different places, and I give talks at different things, go to GDC in San Francisco. I'm going to Boston next month for PAX. And one of the things I consistently see is that Ohio is heavily represented just from people showing up at events, and we are way beating a lot of our other sister states and Midwest states when it just comes to representation at these events. So for example, GDC has a volunteer group, both the conference associates for GDC and the international game developers. Ohio and the Midwest tend to have the biggest block of folks that attend that, obviously outside of California because it's in California. But we're strongly representing who we are and what we like to do. And I think that has a lot to do with, particularly in Ohio, the way that we collaborate with each other. I've worked with different industries, and I've also gone in different states, both for gaming and outside of gaming. And the ability for us to share networks, to collaborate, to communicate with each other, it blows my mind. I think for this talk, for example, I don't think John really even asked me if I wanted to do it. He was just like, you in? I'm like, I'm in. and we do it. And the same thing with GDEX. I was like, is OU in? And John's like, we're in, and we just keep doing it, and we share all of these things. That's really, really big, and a lot of other industries don't do that. They see these things as competition. Their networks are something that belongs to them, and they don't share it. And we see that a lot with the universities in the collegiate world too, where just this collaboration that's happening that is not happening in other states. And I believe that's one of the key reasons why we're propelled. And that's really what has made GDEX successful. So GDEX, as an expo, we view as a platform to help people be successful. Whether you're an individual artist program or whatever, or you're starting your own business, you should be able to come in there, learn more about the industry, connect with others, and then share what you're working on. If we're not hitting those goals, then we're not building the community outright. So last year, we had 27% year-over-year growth, which was pretty incredible. We started to do a couple more advertising methods, and we also just started to use the partnerships that we have. That resulted in 2,700 turnstile attendees throughout the weekend, the largest we've ever had, and that is from 28 states and Canada came to our event. So the previous year, we had like 23-ish, and now we're at 28. I'm hoping to break 30 this year, but we're a national show now. This little thing in Columbus, Ohio, where all the cows are, is starting to pull in and attract folks from across the country, and that's very exciting. I always joke that Multivarious, like, we're not event planners. Like, I had no idea how to make an event before we started this 7 years ago. We just kind of bumble our way through it, but we seem to be doing something right. So, also, we had 112 exhibitors. This includes something that I created about 5 years ago as part of GDEX. It's our ICE section, ISE. It stands for Independent, Student, and Experimental. And this was a way for us to create a cost-effective method so that students and people that maybe are hobbyists in the space that don't have a lot of money can showcase the work they're working on. And every year we get more and more people in our ICE section that are excited to just be a part of something. And it's really cool to see someone who's like on the fence about showcasing it all, take the plunge, do an ICE spot, then the next year they do a main booth. And I've even seen people go from ICE to an exhibitor booth to a big event like PAX East, or go to GDC. So we're starting to see this really large uptick. When it comes to industry exhibitors in the region, I don't think we have any other event that has this many exhibitors specifically around video gaming and creative technology. So that's really, really exciting. And this year also, we saw a big uptick in large exhibitors. So Red Bull came in and we worked with them on a tournament space. PlayStation was here this year. OU always has an awesome booth, and they support the virtual reality section. So definitely come and check that out. And then we had our Dev Day. So we had over 150 guests for Dev Day, which is just all-day learning sessions. And one of the cool things was that Unity came and did one of the premier sessions this year. So we've been building that partnership with them for years, and they had a really, really great event. So if you're interested at all in games development and you want to learn more, I'm obviously a little biased since it's my thing, but there really isn't an event like GDEX anywhere close to here, and it's exciting, and every year I think it gets better and better. We also do charity. So every year we partner with charities. This year we partnered with Global Game Jam, Extra Life, Able Gamers in the past. We've had COSI that we've worked with. Just so you know, Extra Life brings in money for the Children's Miracle Network. So in the case of Columbus, that would be Nationwide Children's Hospital. Able Gamers helps people with physical and mental disabilities be able to game. And then Global Game Jam is this global community that works together. We had was it 2 or 3 weekends ago was Global Game Jam. Anybody participate in Global Game Jam this year? Cool. But for us, it was important to, again, provide a platform for not-for-profits to be successful. And so we give a portion of every ticket we sell to these charities, and then we also comp all of their space needs so that they can come and do any of the fundraising that they might need to while they're at our event. And of course, we promote them and whatnot. This is from Extra Life. This is one of our patient advocates. So he's come the past few years. And he was a patient at Nationwide Children's Hospital, and he was just excited to be a part of it. And we have raised this year, 2018, over $63,000 for Nationwide Children's Hospital. That's not just GDEX, that's everybody in the Columbus realm working together. But that brings our cumulative total since we started to over $300,000 for Nationwide Children's Hospital. So we're having a large impact as a community on these areas where most people don't even think about it, right? They don't think about gaming and charitable contributions in this kind of way. And so I've been that annoying guy at the door of Nationwide Children's being like, hey, look at all the cool stuff we're doing. Hey, we should be recognized for this or that. Because I want that sort of that support, that philanthropic touch to be out there. And also we did Global Game Jam at our site. I did OU had a site, right? And so a lot of places around Ohio had a site. I believe that Multivarious was the largest on-site thing, and that Ohio was the #1 of all Global Game Jam sites. That's not true at all. But I actually was talking to the executive director of Global Game Jam 7, and I was trying to see if I could get like a data dump to cross-reference the different sites, not only in Ohio, but around the country. And unfortunately, their system wasn't able to do that, so I kind of just went through one at a time and looked at the sites. And at least in our sister sites in the states in the Midwest, Ohio in general had the most sites of any state, and those sites had the most people contributing to it of any of the sites. So Ohio had a dominant spot in Global Game Jam this year for probably 30 to 35 states within the country. So I mean that's a big thing. That's showing that we are active or engaged and we want to be a part of this system. So it's all awesome, right? Go us, we're doing good. So let's talk about a couple things even closer to home for a second. So before I jump into anything that we're doing, I do want to just remind people that we're entering into this really cool stage where we're starting to see really neat technologies pop up. So VR and AR is becoming huge right now. 2018, virtual reality was a $7.5 billion industry. By 2021, it's predicted to be a $75 billion industry. So you take virtual reality, you add it to that $180 billion number that we saw earlier for games and large, and then you throw in eSports, and we're going to be at $250 to $300 billion, like $250 billion industry in the next 3 to 5 years. That is substantial. Also, blockchain technology is becoming a bigger and bigger part of gaming. We're working on a thing right now looking at blockchain for account management and creating user accounts and things like that. But there's also a lot of companies, including one here called the Monetizer in Cincy, that's using blockchain for gaming services to integrate things like prizes, trophy lists, all that kind of stuff into games. And then, of course, the Epic Store was just announced, it hasn't even been 3 or 4 months ago, as a direct competitor to Steam, which has been the market dominant player in the PC market for a while. Epic came in with significantly better rates than Steam has. So they threw down the gauntlet. That's a benefit to us because that allows us as developers to keep more money around. And then of course, don't forget mobile. Everyone always forgets about mobile when they're super into games, but Apple is one of the largest gaming platforms in the world. And we don't think about it because they don't sort of present themselves that way. But both on their devices and on the App Store, and of course you have Google and Android having a huge portion as well. So mobile is a really good opportunity for folks to be involved in the space. It's competitive and it has its own set of challenges, but don't forget about it. And then of course, we're starting to see an uptick in diversity. So I mentioned the 52-48 male, female for game players. In the industry, it's about 15 to 20% female developers, which is not a lot, but that's a significant growth over the past 5 years when it was around like 5 to 10%. So we've seen a 2x improvement on women in the games development workforce over the past 5 years or so. And of course, because of the proliferation of indie studios, we're starting to see more diversity and just people in general from across the globe come to this. So it's a global industry. I was invited actually to Chicago for the opening of the Video Games as Art Gallery, and they had some developers from Cuba there. And they were working on this game. This game was really cool. And I was talking to them, and they're like, yeah, our internet infrastructure is terrible. So what they do is every day they pack up their computers, their desktops, their monitors, and they pick them up and they take them to like the central community park because Cuba offers free internet in public spaces. They unpack their stuff, they work outside in the park all day, If it's not raining, then they pack their stuff up and they take it home, and that's their work day. Because they need access to internet, and that's how they get it. But those stories, like as strange as it might be to us, is bringing new ideas into storytelling. And I firmly believe that gaming and virtual reality is the next storytelling medium. So everything from the spoken word up through cave paintings to writing to music to movies, and now we're at games, is just a new mechanism for relaying experiences to each other, right? And I think we're in an exciting time to start seeing more and more of these new experiences. That's not always reflected in the ads that we see on TV for some of these larger games, but for those of us who are in the gaming industry, we see more and more of these small, bite-sized, interesting, unique experiences coming out. And it's a really exciting time to be involved in the industry, both as a gamer and as a developer. So what are we going to do? This is our plan, being Multivarious, to throw down the gauntlet in Ohio. We have been working over the past 5 months with a variety of investors and partners to create, outside of OSU, we can't compete with OSU, but from a private perspective, we're looking to create the largest gaming and eSports initiative in the state of Ohio, which is going to include eSports, it's going to include game development, and it's going to include what I call here a culture network, because for anybody who's involved in gaming, they have to understand that we don't function a lot like other industries do. And one of the questions I was having with the investors is well, what's your customer acquisition cost? I'm like, well, I can get you a number. I know how much it costs to get a sale on GDEX. I know how much it costs to get a sale on a game. But really, gaming revolves around building a strong community of fans that love what you're doing and will support you through merchandise sales, through Twitch viewing, through YouTube viewing. If you can do that, then you're going to end up being successful. And what we want to do is create a platform for people who are creating content, ideally here in Ohio, but expanding into our other sister states, where we can find those people that are making interesting, cool things before they hit it big and provide a platform to support them, just like we do with GDEX. So I unfortunately don't have a ton of details. I'm happy to take any questions if you want to throw stuff at me, but we're still working some things out behind the scenes on this. But this is a very exciting initiative that has a lot of partnerships, including with the universities, that hopefully within the next 2 to 3 months, if you follow us on social media or just on our website, we'll have more information about. But this is a very exciting time for what's going on in Ohio. We are doing things that no other state is doing, and I'm not being hyperbolic when I say that. And I am seeing just people's passion and their investment and their drive like nowhere else. So I think that we're going to be headed towards a very, very bright future for an industry that right now is not giving Ohio much the time of day. So I want you to join us. I've talked about GDEX. I want you to be involved in community groups. I want you to follow us on social media. The number one thing that you can do as somebody who's interested in this is be active and involved in your local community, and then start to go to other things like conferences and advocate for Athens, Columbus, Cincy, for everyone in Ohio to advocate for all the cool stuff that's going on. I can't tell you how many times where I've gone to a conference and I've given someone a card, or we talk about something and they're like, oh, I've heard your name before. And it was like from some article that came out here that ended up matriculating through the industry community at large. There's like these little weird groups in the industry that are like invite only for indie game developers and stuff. So the word of what we are doing collectively is spreading, and it's very, very exciting. So here is some information, some ways that you can be involved with us. I've got my social media. We've got the GDEX and Multivarious up here. But this is the time to step up and be a part of what's going on. In the next 2-3 years, I think we're going to have an entirely different landscape in Ohio, and I'm very excited about it. So I will stop. That's my presentation. If we want to do some questions. And it's hard for me to see hands, so yes.
One of the big issues with getting into gaming, game design, all of that is access to reliable internet. On my road, a quarter mile past me, the people have no internet but what they can get hotspot off of their phone.
Yeah.
How are you supposed to go about changing the infrastructure so that we have more access, so that we can pull more people into this?
Sure. Well, that's a challenging question. And as not being a city planner, access to high-end broadband has been a problem in the U.S. for decades. Part of it just has to do with the rurality of a lot of our states. A lot of it just has to do with the size of the United States. But there's also other things, like even in some of our metro areas, when you compare our internet bandwidth per dollar, we're doing far worse than Europe is. So I think there needs to be a concerted effort from the city and from the states to spend money on it. I mean, the Obama administration had a broadband internet plan that it began rolling out. We haven't really seen much of that happening recently, but I think it needs to be viewed like a public infrastructure investment, like roads and trains and everything else, which unfortunately the U.S. hasn't been super good on lately. But I think that the answer would be making that a priority when you're looking at selecting candidates to vote for and to support, as access to internet, because it is becoming more and more of a necessity, just like having a car was maybe 40 years ago. Having access to good, reliable internet is super important.
An extension of that, if I may.
Go for it.
Do you think that creation groups and small business groups could have an effect on making that something that goes onto a ballot?
Oh, sure. Yeah, absolutely. I think if that's something that people are in desperate need for, then for sure. And one of the things that we're fortunate at our office and the Sandbox, which is our incubator, is we're on Columbus's fiber grid. So we have access to that. And our numbers, like when we talk to our IT guy, like we push and pull a tremendous amount of data. So like our company alone probably accounts for like half of the data in the entire building. Yeah. Yeah, so this is something that we're trying to fix with the initiative that I talked about, looking at bringing a fund in where we can fund these smaller projects. So the core issue is that games are just so expensive. AAA titles are just so expensive to make. You look at like the first Destiny, that game cost $500 million to make, $250 million in development, $250 million in marketing. Like if you're spending that amount of money, that game has to sell, right? And so people just divert to what they think is going to be the norm. I mean, there's a reason why, if you look at game shelves, that almost all of them are like white guy soldier walking away from exploding thing holding gun, right? Like they're trying to sell something that they know will be successful. Really, the best way to do that is to, I think in Ohio at least, work collaboratively to find out the interesting ideas that we think can be successful, then provide the resources necessary from a small business perspective. So this is something that we've noticed too is, you get maybe a couple programmers and an artist together and they have this idea for a project, but like they've never incorporated a company before. They've never written an operating agreement. They have no idea what a non-disclosure agreement is. So all that stuff, that's the kind of stuff that we as a community, we at our incubator can handle so that you can make the game, and we can also provide, producing services and stuff. So for us, we use things like GDEX, and when we go to conventions, we make a note of the games that we think are really, really cool and that we want to support. And several of them are actually over there right now under H2O's awesome. Bombfest is a game that we've been supporting. Actually, Bombfest, to toot our own horn, and I think Zach would back us up, Bombfest exists and was just recently released because of GDEX. We have supported that game from day one, including when he had the initial concept. So finding those things and then supporting them. The problem that we've had in Ohio, and I always say this, I think a lot of people think about the money aspect of it, and the money is important. I don't think we have a money problem in Ohio. We have lots of money and we spend it on lots of things. I think we have a cultural and a perspective problem where people just don't view our industry as one worth putting money into. They'll drop 10 million on a biotech company, and I always pick on biotech because they have in the VC world, biotech has the worst failure rates of any business. They have super high barriers to entry. It's super expensive to be involved in, and they fail much more often than they succeed. You could take a fraction of that money and put it into the games industry, and I think you'd see a lot of good success stories. So. Oh, offhand, I haven't looked at the download lists lately, but you see a lot of the freemium and free-to-play games, Clash of Clans. I'm totally blanking on, not Bejeweled. Oh my lord. Candy Crush, there we go. Thank you. I'm just like, there's a lot of those games. The mobile market's kind of interesting because there's like, if you look at the number of games that come out, and then like the dollar ratio per game, it looks like mobile games make almost no money per game because there's just so many of them. But there's a few sort of on the higher end that eat up almost all of the market and make a lot of money. That's sort of why Multivarious, we've stopped making mobile games specifically, and we're focusing on PC and console right now. But I think there are some positives. When the App Store first came out, there was just that disconnect about spending money on games. So for us who play games, $60 on a game is sort of standard, right? That's what we're used to paying. It seems reasonable. But there was a huge race to the bottom in the mobile space, which started to just drop games down to like $1 or $2, and then eventually free, and then we had freemium. We're beginning to see more players enter the field that are charging for their games, and I think mobile users are getting used to paying for games. So Minecraft, I think, is like $6.99. That just came out. It's like, it's $6.99, you pay for it. Nintendo's released a couple titles now that just have a price tag. Monument Valley, I think, came out, and that was pretty expensive. And then I actually just bought Civilization 6. It was $40 on mobile, which is like $40 for a mobile game. But I think that's going to help change the cultural mentality and start to provide opportunities for people. So our first game, Hatchet, which is still available on iOS and Android, we originally put that out for $2.99, and we weren't getting the sales we wanted. And we're like, all right, well, let's rejigger it, put it out as a free-to-play, and go from there. And as soon as we switched it to free-to-play, we saw our download numbers just shot through the roof. We were getting just tons of downloads, but our revenue dive bombs. So we were getting lots of downloads, but they weren't buying anything, and they weren't investing in the game at all, and the ad revenue just wasn't providing the money that we needed. So looking back, as the CEO, I kind of wish we would have just kept it at $2.99 and gone from there. But the mobile space is a weird space for sure. Yeah.
What do you recommend a person should do if they want to run their own business in the gaming industry?
Oh wow, that's a lot. And how much time do I have? Is this about 5 minutes? Okay. So depending on how long I talk, this may be the last question.
Repeat his question. Couldn't hear.
It was some suggestions on if somebody wants to start their own business in the gaming industry.
What are like some potential problems that like could need solutions when it comes to?
Sure. So the first thing, and this is, I'm going to preface this by saying this is coming from a guy who I love what I do. I love my job. My team is amazing. But starting your own business is one of the most stressful things you will ever do. You're not going to get a lot of support initially. You're not going to get funding initially, at least in Ohio. You're not going to get any publishers helping you out. So it's going to be a grind. We've been doing this for 8 years, and we're just now getting the kind of financial and investor interest that you could get in California if you moved out there and had a good idea. But it's also a really exciting time. So if you're interested in starting your own business, I would definitely make use of the resources here available at OU and other universities from an entrepreneurship and innovation perspective. The big things you're going to need, though, just getting started is incorporating your business, which is super cheap. I think it's like $75 or something in the state of Ohio to incorporate an LLC. It's super cheap. There's a lot of lawyers around, and we have lawyers that you can come and talk to me specifically about that would help you with incorporation, that will either do it for really, really cheap or free. And I don't know if the Entrepreneur Center offers.
Are you here at OU? The Center for Entrepreneurship will do exactly that.
Okay, awesome. So there you go. But it's really important. Most people don't think about the paperwork and the legalities of stuff because, nobody gives a shit if it's not making money, right? Just nobody cares. But there's some point where it transitions where all of a sudden you're like, what do we even have? Who owns it? Where's it coming from? It's just easier to get that stuff out, and taken care of. And it doesn't take that much time. Once you get all that stuff kind of situated, and you can do this in parallel with coming up with your ideas and your games, but you really have to treat it like it's important. Like you have to treat it like it's your job. Like this is something you're gonna do. So carve out, if it's only 10 or 20 hours a week, you're meeting with your team. You can use tools like Slack. I actually have a whole other presentation about ways to use software solutions and everything on the cheap to be successful, and I'm happy to talk to you about that afterwards as well. But you just want to have a really tight vision. I'm a big fan of the clarity of vision, flexibility and process mentality. So have a real clear vision of what you're making, a really clearly defined scope, and then work on your process that will help you get there the quickest. And then once you start to do development, and I don't have the time to talk through that right now, but there's a lot of like little things that will save you time in testing and post-production and release that will help you set up for success. Because one of the things that we've noticed, back to the mobile thing again, a lot of people are throwing games up on mobile or even Steam. I don't know how many of you know this, but there was a statistic at the end of last year. Half of the games on Steam came out in 2018. Steam's been around for like 14, 15 years. Just think about that. Half of the games on Steam came out last year. That means that it is a cluttered field and there's a lot of competition. And most of those games don't make any money because it's just people that think if they build it, they will come. And that's not true. You need to have a really solid both development plan and release plan to be successful. But there are games that are successful that have great ideas. Am I good? Okay. I'm being shooed off the stage, but thank you all. I'm going to be around all day if you want to come up to me and chat with me about everything. I appreciate, John, you inviting me, and Paul, thank you so much. Have a great event. And remember, GDEX.